20 minutes from now, you'll carry something Genghis Khan carried into every battle, a discipline that never waits on feeling. His men marched through frozen terrain nobody expected them to survive, because feeling was never invited into the decision. Here's the uncomfortable part. Willpower isn't the secret. Something colder built his empire, and it's the exact thing missing from your last 10 attempts at consistency. Before we go further, if stories like this are worth your time, staying subscribed means more of them keep getting made, carefully, the way they deserve to be told. Now, back to the step, where an empire began, with one unbreakable habit. Meet David, 31 years old, a phone full of deleted fitness apps, and a drawer stuffed with unused journals. Every Sunday night he makes a plan. Every Thursday, that plan quietly dies. He's not lazy. He's exhausted from starting over. Monday mornings feel electric for him. New playlist, new routine, new version of himself, waiting to be unlocked. By Wednesday, the excitement fades into obligation. By Thursday, one missed alarm turns into a missed week. He tells himself he'll restart Monday. He always does. Here's what nobody warns you about that cycle. Each restart costs something. Confidence erodes a little more each time. David doesn't see a discipline problem anymore. He sees a character flaw, proof that he's simply not built like the people who succeed. That belief is a lie, and it's the same lie almost everyone carries. Now travel backward 8 centuries, to the Mongolian steppe. A boy named Temujin, years before the world would know him as Genghis Khan, wakes up hungry. Again. His father is dead, poisoned by rivals. His clan abandoned him and his family to survive or die on the open grassland. There's no motivational app, no playlist, no Sunday night planning session. Survival doesn't ask if he feels ready. Cold mornings force him out of shelter, whether he wants to move or not. Hunger doesn't negotiate. Enemies don't wait for him to feel inspired. Every single day becomes a non-negotiable act: hunt, move, protect, endure, because the alternative is death. Temujin never had the luxury of motivation. He had necessity instead, and necessity built something inside him that willpower never could. This is the piece missing from every productivity video you've ever watched. Motivation is a feeling. Feelings are unreliable. By design, they shift with sleep, stress, weather, and mood. Build your discipline on a feeling, and you've built a house on water. That's why David's plans always collapse by Thursday. He's been chasing a feeling that was never designed to last. Genghis Khan didn't chase a feeling. He built an identity around action that didn't ask permission from his emotions. Historians studying his early campaigns noticed something strange. His men moved with a consistency that looked almost inhuman. Extreme cold, brutal terrain, exhaustion. None of it changed the outcome. The march continued regardless. That single detail holds the entire secret you came here for. David doesn't know it yet, but he's about to test something similar. Not a new app, not a new plan. One small, non-negotiable action, done specifically on the days he doesn't feel like doing it. That detail, the doing it anyway, separates people who transform from people who simply try. You've likely lived David's Thursday 100 times. Maybe you're living it right now. But here's a question worth sitting with. What if your problem was never a lack of motivation at all? What if you've simply been building on the wrong foundation this entire time? Keep watching. That foundation is about to be replaced. Monday comes again for David, except this time he doesn't open a new app or write a new plan. He picks one thing, just one, 10 push-ups before checking his phone. That's the entire commitment, nothing dramatic, nothing that requires motivation to start. Tuesday, he does it half asleep, annoyed, barely awake enough to count. Wednesday, the day he normally starts slipping, he does it anyway. No excitement, no inspiration, just motion. Here's where the science gets interesting. For decades, psychologists believed willpower worked like a battery. Use it enough and it drains, leaving you powerless by evening. That theory, called ego depletion, shaped how millions of people thought about discipline. Feel tired? Blame low willpower. Fail at night? Blame an empty tank. Newer research tells a different story. Willpower doesn't run out the way a phone battery does. It responds to belief. Studies out of Stanford found that people who believed willpower was limited performed worse under pressure, while people who believed it was renewable pushed through the exact same fatigue. The battery was never the problem. The belief was. Genghis Khan's warriors never studied psychology, but they lived like men who believed effort had no ceiling. Historical accounts describe forces moving through freezing terrain for days, sustained not by comfort, but by an expectation that had nothing to do with how tired anyone felt. The march simply continued. Nobody asked permission from exhaustion. That's the piece David's missing, and probably the piece you've been missing too. If you've stayed with me this far, you already sense this isn't another motivation video pretending to have answers. It's something closer to a blueprint the kind ancient warriors lived by, without ever writing it down. If that idea is landing with you, subscribe now. What comes next is the part most people never get shown, and you won't want to miss it. Thursday arrives, the day David always breaks. His alarm goes off. His body wants 5 more minutes of sleep, wrapped in the same tired argument he's had 100 times before. He does the push-ups anyway. Nothing about it feels good. No surge of pride, no rush of accomplishment. Just 10 reps, completed, done. But something quieter happens underneath the surface, a small crack, in a pattern that's controlled him for years. For the first time in longer than he can remember, David makes it past Thursday. He doesn't notice the shift immediately. Confidence doesn't announce itself. It builds in silence, one completed action at a time, invisible until it isn't. Somewhere between Monday's push-ups and Thursday's exhaustion, something in him started rewriting itself. He still doesn't understand why this time feels different. But you're about to. Because the real secret isn't the push-ups. It isn't the streak. It's a single principle Genghis Khan lived by his entire life, one that separates people who occasionally succeed from people who become unstoppable. And that principle is exactly what comes next. Here it is. The principle Genghis Khan lived by. The one modern psychology only recently gave a name to. He never tried to become disciplined. He became someone discipline simply belonged to. That distinction sounds small. It isn't. Trying implies a choice, still on the table, a debate happening every single morning, between the version of you that wants comfort and the version that wants results. Identity removes the debate completely. When an action becomes part of who you are, you stop negotiating with yourself about whether to do it. Genghis Khan didn't wake up asking if today was a marching day. Marching was simply what he did. The same way breathing was what he did. There was no vote. No internal committee deciding whether conditions were favorable. The action and the identity had fused into a single, unquestionable fact. This is where David's 10 push-ups stopped being small. They were never really about strength. They were a signal, repeated daily, telling his brain a new story. I'm someone who follows through, even when I don't feel like it. Each rep wasn't building muscle nearly as much as it was building proof. And proof, repeated enough times, hardens into identity. Researchers at University College London studied exactly this mechanism. Their findings showed something simple but powerful: habits form fastest not through intensity, but through repetition tied to consistent identity-based cues. Small, repeated actions rewire behavior more reliably than occasional, dramatic effort ever could. The brain doesn't remember your best day. It remembers your most repeated one. That's precisely why David's old plans failed. They demanded transformation: overnight extreme workouts, rigid diets, ambitious schedules built for a version of him that didn't exist yet. Genghis Khan never demanded that kind of leap from his men. He asked for one thing only: show up, regardless of feeling, every single day, without exception. Discipline built this way doesn't require constant willpower, because willpower was never the actual mechanism. Identity is. Say it differently, and it becomes almost uncomfortable. You don't need to try harder. You need to become someone who no longer negotiates. Stop asking whether you feel like training today. Start asking who you're becoming by training anyway. Stop asking if you feel ready to write, to build, to change. Start asking who continues regardless. The question itself does the rewiring. David doesn't consciously understand any of this yet. He just knows Thursday didn't break him this time. He knows Friday came, and the push-ups happened before he even fully woke up. No internal argument, no negotiation, just motion. Something in him has quietly shifted from trying to being. This is the exact mechanism behind every historical account of Mongol endurance that seems almost impossible by modern standards. Not superhuman willpower, not unlimited motivation. An identity so fused with action that stopping was never actually considered an option worth debating. You've spent years trying to fix your discipline. But discipline was never broken. You were simply building it on the wrong foundation: motivation, mood, and moments of inspiration that were never designed to last. There's still a harder test coming. Because identity doesn't get proven on easy days. It gets proven when everything says stop. 3 weeks in, David gets hit with the kind of week that tests everything. His job piles on deadlines he didn't see coming. His sleep collapses to 5 hours a night. His body aches in that dull, persistent way stress creates when it settles into muscle instead of passing through it. Tuesday morning arrives, and for the first time since he started, David genuinely doesn't want to move. Not the ordinary reluctance of getting out of a warm bed. Something heavier. A voice inside him, calm and reasonable, offering an easy exit. Skip today. You've earned a break. One missed day won't undo 3 weeks of progress. The voice sounds convincing precisely because it isn't wrong on the surface. This is where most people quietly disappear from their own transformation. Winter, 1211. Genghis Khan's forces crossed terrain so brutal that later historians would question how any army survived it. Temperatures dropped low enough to freeze exposed skin within minutes. Supplies ran thin. Exhaustion wasn't a possibility, it was the baseline condition every soldier operated under, day after unrelenting day. Nobody asked if the men felt ready to continue. Accounts from the campaign describe something unusual for armies of that era. The march didn't slow to match how anyone felt. Cold discipline, historians would later call it not cruelty, not recklessness, but a refusal to let internal weather dictate external action. Feelings were acknowledged. They simply weren't obeyed. That distinction changes everything about how you should read David's Tuesday. He's allowed to feel exhausted. He's allowed to want the break his mind is offering him. What he's not allowed to do, if he wants what Khan's men understood instinctively, is let that feeling cast the final vote. David sits on the edge of his bed for nearly a full minute, phone in hand. The skip today argument still running quietly in the background. Then he puts the phone down. 10 push-ups. Slower than usual. Weaker than usual. Completed anyway. Nothing about this moment feels triumphant. There's no music swelling, no sudden burst of clarity. Just a man doing something small, while every reasonable excuse told him not to bother. And that's precisely the point most people miss about discipline. Built this way, it was never supposed to feel good in the hard moments. It was only ever supposed to happen. Cold discipline doesn't mean an absence of struggle. It means the struggle stopped having a vote. David finishes, showers, and heads into a day that's still exhausting, still overloaded, still difficult in every practical way. Nothing about his circumstances improved. What changed was smaller and far more important. He now knows his hardest days don't automatically win. That knowledge is worth more than any streak. Because eventually, everyone faces their own frozen march, the week where motivation disappears completely and only identity remains standing. Genghis Khan's army survived theirs. David just survived his first real one. You will face yours too, probably sooner than you think. The question that decides everything comes next. What happens after identity has been tested and hasn't broken? Something changes after a person survives their first frozen march. Not the circumstances around them, those rarely change on command. What changes sits quieter, underneath the surface, in a place David couldn't name until now. He stops asking whether he'll train today. The question simply disappears. The same way you don't ask yourself whether you'll brush your teeth or lock your front door. Some actions graduate past decision-making entirely. They become automatic, wired into identity so deeply that skipping them would feel stranger than doing them. Neuroscientists have a name for this shift. Repeated behavior, especially behavior tied to a consistent cue and a stable sense of self, eventually moves from the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for conscious decisions, into the basal ganglia, where automatic patterns live. Once that transfer happens, an action stops requiring willpower. It simply runs. The way walking runs. The way breathing runs. This is precisely why Genghis Khan's discipline looked inhuman to outside observers. It wasn't inhuman. It was automated, forged through thousands of repetitions until choice stopped being part of the equation. David didn't decide to become consistent. He became someone consistency happened to. Look at where this started. A man convinced his failures proved something broken inside him, a cycle repeating every single week, confidence eroding with each restart. Somewhere underneath all of it, one small, non-negotiable action, repeated specifically on the days it wasn't wanted, quietly rewired the entire pattern. 10 push-ups never mattered as an exercise. They mattered as evidence, collected daily, that David was someone who follows through regardless of feeling. Evidence compounds. Given enough repetitions, it hardens into identity. And identity, once formed, doesn't ask permission from Monday motivation or Thursday exhaustion. Genghis Khan built an empire this way, not through bursts of inspired brilliance, but through an identity so fused with action that stopping was never genuinely available as a thought. His men didn't march because they felt like marching. They marched because marching was simply what they were. You've spent years searching for the version of motivation that finally sticks. It was never going to stick, because motivation was never the foundation meant to hold everything up. Identity was. Stop asking who you'll try to become tomorrow. Start acting, today, as the person who already doesn't negotiate, and let the identity catch up to the evidence you're building. David still has hard days. He still has mornings where the old voice offers him an easy exit. The difference now is simple. That voice no longer gets the final vote. Something steadier does. That steadier thing has a name. Cold discipline. The same force that carried an empire through frozen terrain 8 centuries ago now lives quietly inside a man who almost gave up by Thursday, every single week, for years. It can live inside you too. It's already closer than you think. One choice remains. The one that decides which version of you shows up tomorrow. You now know what Genghis Khan knew. Discipline isn't a feeling you wait for. It's an identity you build, one non-negotiable action at a time. Pick one thing today. Something small enough to survive your worst day. Do it anyway. That's how empires got built. That's how you get built. Subscribe. Become dangerously consistent.